Vigilance here once again, and today we're going to be discussing my final, effectively, season 1 review for Dirk Gently. So I've just managed to finish watching it, I believe last night with my girlfriend. We've been slowly working our way through it. Well, I say slowly, we've pretty much been watching an episode every night or every other night for the last week or so. It was something I wanted to follow through with. Following initially doing that episode 1 review, and I'm pleased to say that I had a good response on YouTube. So of course I wanted to finish that off. And one thing I want to say pretty much immediately about this, and I was very pleasantly surprised by this, is that it's absolutely fantastic. It's a really brilliant show. I'll just cut to the chase right away for those of you that are curious. It's probably the best TV show I've seen in the last year. I'll be also quite frank about the fact that I don't watch a tremendous amount of TV. I'm quite selective in what I do. I'm much more focused on video games and films and stuff like that. But it's been really great. And obviously I've a little bit more to say than that. I've got some notes that I've made here which I'll go through with you. But it's really brilliant. And I think I can kind of follow on from what I said initially in the first review, and the general summary was it was something that was very interesting. I thought it was well structured, well put together. The characters felt about right. It felt a little bit disjointed in parts because there were so many moving pieces. And knowing what I know now, I can certainly tell you that that it does make sense, and particularly for what they went for, it's no surprise whatsoever really that that it was going to be difficult to do a pilot on it, because it's not a straightforward show. It portrays itself as kind of like a mystery kind of action type TV show, but there's definitely a bit more to it than that, and it really is very high quality. So I've got some notes here, and let's just go through them. So, I mean, I won't go through this in a kind of bullet point by bullet point fashion, but first of all, my first point. The overall presentation of the show, the appearance of it is absolutely top notch. It looks great in HD. All of the characters look great. The environments are good. They accurately portray the area. We go through different parts of Seattle and different environments and areas, and every area feels as you would hope it to feel. It's not just a typical kind of grungy city. There's a bit more to it than that. And that's something that holds up very well, particularly as we get later on in the season, and I won't spoil what happens, but there's some slightly different environments, and they're all portrayed very well and feel authentic. I'm just in terms of the characters themselves, the characters are also really solid. They're portrayed excellently. There's not a single one, certainly that I can think of, that really lets the team down. Even when you look at kind of the top level characters, Dirk and friends, and Todd Elijah Wood's character, they're all portrayed excellently. The performance is on the money, and you never feel as though it's inauthentic and doesn't work what they're trying to do. It really works well. Even down to, as I say, the kind of the little guys, the goons here and there, they're consistent and they work for what their characters are and how they're represented. So it's really fantastic. It's almost difficult to review it to an extent because there's not much to criticize. The pacing is excellent. There was never a point throughout the series where I was looking at my watch going on, when are we going to finish here? When's this going to wrap up? Where is it going? It always kept me guessing, and I was never quite sure where we were going to end up and what the end game was going to be here. But I think this is something I'll move on to later in my notes as well. I actually really liked that, and I thought that was really refreshing. In a lot of cases, I don't know if maybe I'm just a bit of a know-it-all and trying to be a smart ass, but I feel like I know really where we're going and what the end game is going to be. And it's refreshing to have a show that doesn't give all that away, and it's difficult to figure that out. And it takes, in my opinion, a bit of well, I can't really spoil it too much, but despite the fact that it has this kind of wacky tone, it actually can be quite dark in places. And I mentioned in my initial review for episode 1 that despite the fact that it's clearly quite kind of light-hearted in some respects, it also has some pretty dark moments, and they get in some pretty tough scenarios, and you do fear for these characters. You really do, because I can tell you now, the show isn't afraid to put them in difficult circumstances, and that's good because, and this is what I wanted to compare it to, similar to Game of Thrones. One of the reasons Game of Thrones is so well known is because it's not afraid to kill a character off or to chop people up or to do whatever. And this is not a show that you would associate with Game of Thrones in any respect, but there is a bit of that ruthlessness there, and that's good to see as well, because you need to value your characters, you need to care about them, and they certainly taken that on board. Another point, every character is relevant and ties into the story well, particularly as we come towards the end. Some of them, it's really not clear quite where they fit in or why they're here. You have this kind of one large overarching theme, and then there's a couple of guys who seem to be off doing their own thing, and it's never really quite clear what their intentions are or why they're doing what they're doing. But it ties them in really well towards the end, and it doesn't kind of leave really, certainly none that I can think of, any kind of loose ends. There's a couple of characters that we're still not 100% sure what perhaps they're trying to achieve, but I think that's something that the overall lore can build onto and into as we go forward, because this is based off the Dirk Gently books, and I'll be honest, I don't know much about the books, but I believe there are a number of stories, it's not just one, and this TV show is quite a big departure from what that show is usually about, certainly from what I've heard. So yeah, I think there's certainly more to come there in terms of plot and where they can take this. I don't think this is just a self-contained season. I think there is more to it. One of the criticisms I think I made in passing originally was that Dirk Gently was kind of the most one-dimensional character, and he kind of felt like a parody of Sherlock. The kind of Sherlock and Watson dynamic you have of the one really wacky guy, Benedict Cumberbatch's character. If you've seen the latest Sherlock, which is brilliant by the way, you should also check that out. He's very off the wall, and just it's never clear what he's trying to do, but it's explained actually what that's about, and there is more depth to him. He's not just there as a comedic device or just to liven things up. There is actually some depth to him, and we understand a little bit more behind the workings of his mind and what the background of the show is. And I thought that was really cool as well. And they don't throw it in your face, it's not rammed down your throat, but it's cool to see that, because obviously fundamentally he's one of, if not the main character. So it's great to have that as well, and I feel it does add depth. The only really major minor point, well, I mean, I'd say it's probably a fairly minor criticism, all things considered, but the ending, I would argue, has kind of been done before. I really can't talk about it at all because obviously we'd spoil it. However, the way it's utilised and the way things finalise does work well to bring the whole thing together. There's other kind of movies, and I'm not saying this is a direct comparison, just as a reference point. But if you think about things like Fight Club and other more mysterious kind of plots, they all come together in the end, and there's that kind of moment of, oh, okay, yeah, now I get it. And actually, it works well now that I think about it, because you could go back and rewatch the season and probably see things that you wouldn't have initially seen or quite gotten, because it doesn't give itself away too much. So ultimately, that provides a feeling that you're never quite sure where we're going to go with this. And as I say, I found that really refreshing, and it's a great thing to see, and hopefully we'll see more of it. I am hopeful for a second season here. And from what I understand, it has actually already been received a green light for late 2017, which sounds quite ambitious, to be honest with you. And supposedly that's with 10 episodes as opposed to 8 as we've had here. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for that. I'll 100% be covering that as well once it comes out. As I mentioned, I feel like there is definitely more to this universe, and there's more that we can cover and go into without it feeling like it's just being rehashed and going over the same areas. I think they'll struggle to create the same sense of mystery and depth, because obviously we know certain things now that we didn't know before. However, that'll be interesting as well. In summary, I think those of you who liked the likes of Sherlock, Doctor Who, Misfits, any kind of supernatural show with a kind of mystery element to it, maybe Supernatural, the actual show, for those of you that have seen it, those are the kind of things which you probably, I would say, is a good reference point for this, and you will enjoy this if you've enjoyed that. I'm going to be bold with this, and I'm going to go out and give it a 9.2, which is the highest I've ever given anything with this channel so far. I think it's really fantastic, and it's really difficult to criticize anything on that they put in front of us. Whether they can keep that up for another season is going to be an interesting question. But yeah, 100% go and see this. Fantastic show. And I'm really happy with what they presented, and it's been a breath of fresh air for me in terms of quality and just the whole thing. It's just really great. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Definitely go and check it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see some of my other recommendations. And yeah, we'll see you again next time. Cheers.